Hello. I'm losing my headphone already. That's a good start. Okay, you had a long day and you learned a lot of stuff. And today I'm going to talk a bit about how you can use all these new technologies to build a better web for the future, and how each and every one of you could do this and should do this as well. And it's not only the people on stage and the creepy people on the big screen that actually should be allowed to do these kind of things, but all of you are actually part of this revolution and evolution of the web. I'm Chris. I'm Code Poet on Twitter, and I blog on waittilI.com. I'm on HTML5 on IRC a lot, and my job is to be a developer evangelist. So I get people excited about new technology and explain very complex technology in very simple terms. If you don't know what a developer evangelist is, I wrote a handbook about it that is free online. If you want to translate it, that'd be great. And there's lots of tips how you can actually, as a technical person or also not as a non-technical person, to get your company to listen to you and to explain very complex things in a way that people understand you and give you raises and all kind of things. I normally don't look like a rundown gym trainer or a 19th drug dealer like I do right now, but my suitcase hasn't arrived. It just arrived 10 minutes ago, so the timing was amazing. So now, tonight, I can probably look better again, so that's pretty good. So I'm a big film buff. I don't have a television. I'm not for 10 years, and I don't watch television shows. I watch movies instead, because I like movies. And a few days ago, I watched a movie called The Heartsucker Proxy, which I hadn't seen for a long, long time. It's a movie by the Coen brothers that is just absolutely beautiful. The typography in it, the camera movements, and the story is wonderful. The story is about Norval Barnes, who is an entrepreneur. And the problem with Norval is that he's actually stuck in a dead-end job. Like he goes into New York to become famous, and he's stuck as a mail boy in this company that's just completely and utterly evil. Much like a lot of developers are in their companies right now who want to be entrepreneurs. The problem with Norval is he has ideas, but he has a really, really bad way of explaining them. So when people tell them like, oh, you say you're clever, he shows this paper with this ring on it and says like, you know, for kids. This is all he says, so people think he's a complete idiot. Which is quite interesting, because when there's a change in management in the company, a quite drastic change because the director jumps out of the window on the 44th floor, the people on the board of the company realize that in his will, he says that the company has to become public. And they all see their money going away. My God, we're shareholders, and now everybody can become a shareholder. So they want to make sure that the company does really, really badly before it goes public on the stock market. So they want a complete idiot as president, which is, they do. They get Norval to become president of the company. And Norval then gets this chance to shine. And he explains that actually the, you know, for kids is actually the hula hoop. The hoop that you do these movements with. And he's really excited in front of the board moving around with that, and everybody's like, yeah, he is an idiot. Wonderful. And we do the hula hoop, great idea, wonderful idea, and they spent months advertising it and coming up with a price for it and what they should call it. And then they put it into the shops and nobody wants to buy it. It's completely pointless, nobody wants to buy a hula hoop, they almost go bankrupt trying to do that. And then a shop owner actually gets very annoyed with this and throws a lot of those out into the street and says like, okay, these hula hoops are pointless. And one of them rolls in front of a kid, and the kid just looks at it and thinks about, what can I do with that? And the kid goes into the ring and starts using the hula hoop in front of a school. And all the other kids are basically looking at him go, and it's like, what the hell is going on? But this is so cool. I want to have this. And out of a sudden, all the kids run into the shops and buy the hula hoops, and the company does really, really well because the hula hoops are becoming a big success because the kids saw another kid using that hula hoop. So what the heck does that have to do with this conference? You might be thinking right now. That's exactly what new technology is about, what web development and web technology is about. It will not come from top down with marketing, with advertising, and your boss telling you, you use this new stuff, here's 5 hours of your time. That will not happen. But if you see somebody else using that new technology, you get excited about it and you start using it. If somebody else sees you using new technology, they get excited about it. I mean, this lady here, like in San Francisco, doing the hula hoop, who does not want to join her? I mean, you're totally spoiled here in Lithuania with all the beautiful women that you have, but in England, that's a very, very important step. So new technologies should not need marketing. Right now, Google, Microsoft, and Apple are all going like HTML5 and web standards. We're the HTML5 company. No, you are. No, we are. We are better. We're more HTML5 than you. We're HTML5.5 or whatever. And it just annoys me that it's all marketing. And why don't we just use the stuff and build good things with it? We're always looking at movies and writers and inspiring people for technology. This, as probably you remember, was Minority Report. And that was the future when that movie came out. Like these interfaces that you move like this and you move things around and make them bigger. Totally useless interface. If you do that all day long, your arms will be this big. But then I realized that this is Tom Cruise. So the interface is on this height. So normal people can sit down, and most people here can kneel down actually to use it. So always think about these new technologies in context. And I want to invite you to take new technologies that we're discussing right now, that we're inventing right now, that we're playing with right now, and to just jump into the hoop and go for it. Just play with them. And let's face it, nobody cares what web developers do as long as it looks pretty. If we want to innovate, we put it ourselves in. Our bosses don't ask us to do that. Every time I used new technologies in my old jobs and my current job, not necessarily, but before that, I just put them in and said like, okay, 2 months later when they got into the press, we have that already because I put it in. Okay, I told you I need more time for fixing things, but I just wanted to put them in myself. So you should always aim for the long goal, because web standards and web development is all about maintenance. Not about building something cool, but you build for the person that takes over from you. You build for the next guy that has to understand what you've been doing, because probably you moved on to another company or you're on holiday and somebody else has to understand it. So aim for the long goal. Like here, I have to face it, my dog cannot be trained, 5 years teaching him JavaScript and he still hasn't grasped the basics. It's a dumb dog. The technologies are not magic. We're going full circle to what we've done in 1998 and 2000 when we said web standards are there to stay. Don't build things only for Internet Explorer 6, Internet Explorer 5. Don't build things in Shockwave or whatever languages back then were really cool. We said HTML is there to structure your content, CSS is there to style it, and JavaScript is there to make it interactive. This washes a bit out nowadays because some technologies overlap, but it's still those 3 technologies, and there's no magic in any of them. I can train anybody on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. JavaScript may be a bit trickier, but who doesn't understand HTML, that's really, really hard to find people that don't know, can't grasp it as soon as they see it. And we should now use the whole stack. We should now build for the future and use all these new technologies. This is the dashboard that Mozilla released a few days ago that shows you all the features of HTML5 and new friend technologies that are available for you in browsers right now. All this stuff you can do. You can do in browsers, you cannot do in IE6, but there's ways around that as well. So one of the things is, for example, forms on the web were always so painful to fill in. They're just stupid. Select boxes, radio buttons, check boxes, input fields. Input field, generic input field for everything. So you had to write a validation for everything. You had to write a mask for everything. You had to tell people, please put this in. And we now have new controls. We have autocomplete controls that instead of typing a whole word, it automatically finishes the word for me. We have a color picker control, so we can pick a color rather than parsing what people have entered as a color. That was supported by BlackBerry first, of all things. We have a calendar control, and I think whoever came up with time and date hates developers. There's really nothing more infuriating than writing a calendar control and a validator for dates. Like Americans different to us, and then, oh my God, it's just so annoying. URL email input field. So instead of just typing your email every single time, when I call a field on email on the iPhone, it goes to my emails and finds the email and does autocomplete on them. So I don't have to type in the whole email every single time. We have all these new controls and we should be using them, because if the browser does not support them, it falls back to a simple input field. It doesn't hurt anybody, but for mobile phones and for better supported browsers, it already is in there. Geolocation. Everybody talks about geolocation for checking in and these kind of things. With 2 lines of JavaScript, I can find out where a user is on this planet. And why can't I use that for a form? Why do I have to say, please type in an address, when the button could be there saying like, find me? I click this button, it fills in the city, it fills in the state, it fills in the country, it fills in the postcode. All these things are available in data sets like Yahoo's GeoPlanet, for example, and we don't have to type that in anymore. And the less people have to type in, the better, especially on mobile phones, because I don't want to type in on my Nexus while I'm driving in the car or whatever. It's much easier if I find information out there already. And geolocation is a thing that's still underused, and it's so easy to use. Local and offline storage. We do that a lot on mobile phones. We're like, oh, that's very important that if I'm offline, if I don't have a data plan, I can still use the system. But you can use that for any of your websites. Why not store the interface locally? Next time when the user comes back, the form gets rendered and they don't have to type in all the things that they've done before or checkboxes and these kind of things. Why not allow your systems, your normal websites, to have an offline storage? So if somebody goes there and actually goes to your website and stores some data and later on opens their laptop in a train, your site is there and you can still type things in. You can type things in and store them in offline storage, and as soon as you go online, it syncs with your real site and you have that data there. We should not interrupt people's day-to-day life by saying like, well, you have to be online for that, otherwise we give you a warning message, oh, you're not online, we can't use that system. We should be cleverer, and there are events for that. We know when we're offline, we know when we're online, and you can store up to 5 meg per domain on every browser right now. And that's much better than cookies wherever, and it's much easier for users as well in JavaScript itself. SVG and Canvas is an absolutely beautiful thing. Nowadays, I remember when I started with computers, I just plotted these circles and rectangles and like in 10,000 lines of BASIC. And then I went to the web, and out of a sudden I realized I can't generate images. I can't generate things in the browser except for going through Flash or going through ImageMagick in PHP on the server and generate static images. With SVG and Canvas, we have a drawing board in the page, and we can paint on that, we can delete that, we can move that around, we can write games in it. And with SVG, we can take data and make it beautiful. There's this library called d3.js, and all it does is if you have a data table in the page, a data table that could come from a spreadsheet, that could come from Google, that could come from everywhere else, you can turn it into these wonderful, beautiful interfaces that you see here. All these graphs are available to you, are interactive, resize automatically, and you don't have to know much JavaScript to use it. You just point it to the table and you say which one you want, and you get a rich experience and a beautiful, beautiful website, and it makes much more sense for people to go through your data if they can understand it a bit. And I don't understand SVG and Canvas that much, but the library does it for me. And I don't have to worry about it. And I love visualizations. I think it's a very important part of what we do when we try to get messages across. CSS3 is the big thing for iPads and iPhones and all these kind of things. And you can do so many things in CSS now that you couldn't do in the past. In the past, we removed the underline of a link when you hovered over it. Whoa, fucking awesome. Like, that's the best thing ever. Like, I once won a pitch with that. I once won a pitch against another agency in 1998 by showing a rollover of an image. You can't do that nowadays anymore because people are not that impressed with it anymore, even if it works in IE6. But with CSS3, we have all these really rich controls. So if you look at this is part of the dashboard. You have transform controls, for example, that would transform a text when you roll over it. You have transitions that turn things in 3D and make them zoom and blur them for you. You've got media queries to have websites that resize according to what your page is, border radius, gradients, no images anymore needed, columns, multi-column layouts, CSS drop shadow, all the things that we always had to open Photoshop for and then translate it into 15 different languages, we can do now in HTML, and with CSS we got all this graphical goodness around it. And we can even like take videos here and clip them into a different, in a speech bubble and these kind of things. This is all available. This is all available on the Mozilla website, and it actually works immediately. It's on GitHub as well if you want to play with it, if you want to try it out. HTML5 video and audio, to me, is probably the biggest step that we're doing right now. I love video, and you saw before, video is a very, very powerful thing. Problem with video was always you were at the mercy of the Flash provider that gave you the video player. So video was this black thing in the page that nobody understood. We hope it works, but it can't talk to the rest of the page. Whereas in HTML5, that's totally possible. In HTML5, a video element is just another element in the page. You can style it with CSS. You can do all kind of weird things with it. And this is something when I was bored at in the hotel in San Francisco last time, I built this little, I saw the Indiana Jones movie. And you always have these cool animated maps in the Indiana Jones movies. And I always loved them as a kid as well, so I thought I'd do something with it. So I did this video of Charles Lindbergh flying from Paris to New York. And as the Indiana Jones music is copyrighted, we basically had to sing it ourselves, which doesn't work here right now, but fair enough. So it animates the map while the video is playing over it in half transparency. So that's all done in CSS. So I took the length of the video and calculated all the steps in between on Google Maps, so it syncs up with the whole flight of the plane, and when it's not available anymore, when the video is done, I land in New York and I roll the end credits. All of this, again on GitHub, it's HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. There's no Flash involved, there's no Shockwave involved, there's no Silverlight, no, there's nothing else involved but JavaScript and CSS. And this is, of course, just a fun thing to do, but I thought you can use this kind of idea, the syncing of the timing of the video and content in the page itself. You can use that for interactive training materials, for example. So this thing was on Smashing Magazine a few days ago. I actually have this video of me where I explain things about HTML5. And while I'm explaining HTML5, I show these different websites that I'm speaking about in the video. So instead of controlling the video from the HTML, which we normally do, like we write a cool player to basically look at the buttons, they look like the CI of our clients, I'm using the video to control what HTML to show in the page itself. And that way I can sync up resources with the video and make it much more interactive, much more interesting. And if you look at the source code of that, what I've done here is just an article element, which is a new HTML5 element, with two attributes, a data start and a data end. So you don't need to know any JavaScript to show different parts of the HTML and hide them according to the video where you are at the moment. All you have to do is change these two HTML attributes to make that work. And before that, with like the YouTube API or like JW Player and all these video players, there was always a total pain to make that work. You either had to write an XML document or a JavaScript object. And as you can easily talk from JavaScript to from video to HTML in HTML5, that's all you need to do. Again, play with that, download it, translate it, mess it up. I'm happy with it. As I said, I'm a movie buff, and I always like things in the background that you don't normally see. Like when you have a microphone hanging in from the screen or something like that. These little things that go wrong in movies. And my problem was that not a single video player that I know zooms into the video. So you can zoom the whole video, but you cannot see a part of the video. And you also cannot rotate the video. And as I know nothing about C++ or Java or whatever, on a hardcore level to write something for the operating system, I thought HTML5, CSS3 can rotate stuff. Video is just another element in the page. How about I write a JavaScript player that allows you to do that? And this is what this one does. So I've got a pause and play button here. I play the video, which is a copyright-free video. I pause it, I play it again. And then I can actually start moving the video around and zooming into it. So this is all running in the browser, doesn't make my fan go up, doesn't use half of my processor, as a lot of Flash solutions do. So I can zoom in and out of the video, and I can rotate the video just by changing the video element in the page. I don't do anything to the video itself, just the display of it. This is really fast and speedy, and it shows you just how far down in the video you can get in HTML5. And it's just wonderful because I can maintain all of that stuff in HTML. I don't need to know Flash. I don't need to know Silverlight. I don't need to know JavaScript. All I need is write a JavaScript that allows me to control a video that way. If you want to go really nuts, then you use Canvas and HTML5 video together. This one here is an example that analyzes a video with the 2 iPhones that he's holding, where the white pixels are. And it uses these white pixels as cornerstones for the other parts that we put in there. So we inject one video into another video, or we inject an image into the video, or a canvas animation, or you can type your own text to prove that it's not fake, that it's just basically a real thing. So you click on the text, and the text will show up in that video. Or you can even start painting inside that video, and it's only possible because HTML5 video is native to the browser, and there's nothing in there that I cannot access with JavaScript. And before that, that was not possible, and I think that's amazingly powerful what we can do with that. So the other thing, of course, to think about is device orientation and the matrix transformations of the device itself. This becomes interesting when you do things in iPad, iPhone, all kind of tablets that are going on right now. And you can access that in JavaScript now. Until half a year ago, that wasn't possible. You had to write an iOS Cocoa app or all kind of things. Nowadays, you can do it in HTML5. So I can realize if it's like this way around or that way around, and I can even take the accelerometer of a MacBook and do things with it. Apple on Jules Verne Day had this logo, Google on Jules Verne Day had this logo that had waves in it. When you moved your laptop, the waves were going back and forth. I can see a lot of people really breaking their laptops that way, but well, it's for the sake of animating things, so why not? Also very clever, if you have an iPad, if you see that there's a little clip on top of the home button, so your kids can play with it without buying things from the iPhone store. Really good idea as well. This is Webgl, and this is where it gets really hardcore. Webgl is actually a 3D interface to Canvas. And what Webgl allows you to do is do real proper 3D animation natively in the browser. So this is the body explorer from Google Labs. And this was yesterday in the hotel here. So this is not a fast connection. But it actually allows you to do 3D modeling native in the browser without having to go through a plugin, without having to go through learning all kind of funky stuff. So anybody who's ever done any OpenGL development for games development, for example, can do that now in JavaScript, in the browser, and give people an experience like that. And how cool is that? I mean, a few years ago, I was like, yeah, well, that will never run in the browser, I'm sorry. And it doesn't use much on my processor either, because it's hardware accelerated in new browsers for you. Messaging in workers is another thing that's not that used yet. So messaging is basically WebSockets. What it allows you to do is make a connection from the user to your website that is not interrupted. So it's a connection that starts and it only ends when the end user disconnects. Right now, when we do any messaging to a client out there, we always have to send it every 20 milliseconds or something like that. And that's why these things don't scale. That's why they're really slow. Whereas with WebSockets, we can scale it to thousands of players in an online game, for example, without slowing down your server and without slowing down the interface in itself. Web workers is basically a way to calculate very, very heavy things and just get the data back once it's finished calculating. So a lot of times you find, for example, you have some a tab where there's some calculation going on, and the other one you have maps, and the maps are really slow. With web workers, I could do this calculation in a different thread, and when it's done, it gives me the data back. So my interface becomes snappy. My interface doesn't slow down, and that's the most important thing, because people get scared when they see things going slow. And I want you to take this information, and I want you to take these things and be greedy. Like, not just say, like, oh, I would love to use them from time to time, but be saying, like, I want this to be beautiful. I don't want it to just work. I want it to be amazing. I want it to be like that's in the browser, really? And I want people to say like, okay, well, that's not a browser. And they look at this stuff and how cool would that make you feel? So accept the challenge of new technology and make beautiful, beautiful things. Microsoft did this with the beauty of the web collection. So there's lots of websites that they show how beautiful the web can be. And it uses like lots of font stuff and 3D animation and really, really good stuff. So the showcase is pretty good. And it works across all the browsers out there as well, not only on Internet Explorer 9, because I myself can't use IE9. I've got a Mac and a Linux machine. Sorry. Google released 20 Things I Learned, which is a great, great book on web technologies, starting from like how does a web server work, how do I get a document from a web server and show it in my machine, and how do all these technologies go together. So it's a really well-written, beautiful book that is in HTML5 here. So it wraps around, it works on your iPad, it works on your iPhone, wherever you want to go. And it just shows how an interactive booklet on the web can look and still be indexable by search engines, for example. That's always the big problem. We could all do all this stuff in Flash, but then we make an HTML version out of it that's almost as pretty. And we don't have to do that anymore because HTML5 can be terribly pretty. Great example for this is the Nissan Leaf website. And I just came across that a few days ago. This one is an interface that a few years ago we would have done in Flash and in Silverlight. So you have all these like bubbles there and everything moves around. And it's very interactive and can sometimes be annoying as well. But if you look at the source code of the page itself, this is all SVG. So all of that is actually XML, gets indexed by search engines, get found, can be translated with a content management system rather than having to go into a Flash movie. And you can actually change it in Firebug and play around with it. And it gets really exciting if you look at the 360 view on this website. This is basically HTML right now. This is not Flash, this is not Java, this is not Silverlight. And this was yesterday night on my slow machine in the hotel room. This is how the web could be already if we just used it the way it is, with the technologies that are at our disposal. So the outside view, you switch to another color, you have the red, you can actually rotate the whole car and see it. These are all images that they just generated from a 3D camera, done. And this is all indexable by search engines. You can translate it in your content management system. There's nothing alien there. Everything is part of the browser. Nike pushed the boundary a bit on designs as well. They thought about why does every website have to be a big scroll bar and just get content in like a few columns and make it pretty? Why don't we just break out and say like, well, we don't know how big your screen is, but here's a massive website and a few dots that show you how big the site is itself. And if you look at the site and you scroll around it, this is what it looks like. So you got that parallax depth effect going on. And all of that is CSS3 and JavaScript and HTML5. So none of this is actually done in something that cannot be maintained by anybody, that is really hard to use. It's just native controls. And I applaud Nike for a company that I would think is just design-driven and wouldn't care about technologies. But by using HTML5, this works on the iPad, this works on computers, this works everywhere it actually can go. You see how many pixels you scrolled, which is totally pointless, but it's fun. So at the end of the story here, you scrolled so many pixels, well done you. And if you look at the source code, again, you can copy and paste that, you can play with it, you can try it out, you can make your own website that looks exactly like Nike's, and probably shouldn't put it live because they will sue you, but you can learn from it. And that's exactly what I think technology and open technology should be like. It should not be magic. I should not have to pay an extra designer, an extra developer, just to make something pretty. I should just have the thing and natively allow my developers with their skill set to do it. So this is all HTML5 as well. A few days ago, Mozilla created the Web of Wonder website, where we're going to collect showcases of absolutely amazing HTML5 and new technology things. So go to that one, try it out. If your browser does not support it, you can see a video of the things. So even if you want to show it to people that don't want new technology, you're like, this is how cool it could be. And there's some awesome, awesome stuff in there. This is a remixing reality. So what that one does is these pages that he has there are actually 2D QR codes, like these mobile codes. and we put this ball in that jumps from one to the other. So you can actually take video and in the next step then live video and actually inject things in it and interact with the video itself, all in native JavaScript, HTML, CSS. Not hard to learn, just go for it and do it. The problem that a few people have with HTML5 is that you completely through the looking glass. There's nothing hidden. You cannot protect things in HTML5. Your videos are downloadable, your images are downloadable, your source code is available to everybody, your CSS can be seen by everybody. But why is that a problem? I don't see it as a problem at all. Everything I released and wrote in my whole career, I released for free and gave it out to people because people learned from it, people told me it was shit and I learned from it, people translated it for me, I found people that played with my stuff that I hired later on. So you cannot protect things on the web. If it's on the screen, it can be stolen. Just give it up. Just forget about thinking you can put an image up there. It was my favorite when you walk with photographers. I want to make you a website. Okay, can you protect my images from being downloaded? How can I put images out there without people being able to download them? And yeah, it's easy. You put it on a memory stick and you leave it in your suitcase. You don't put it online. As soon as it's online, as soon as it's on a screen, I can take a photo of your image. Duh. I can connect something directly to the video card. Somebody did this with World of Warcraft, has these 3D models in there, and they're all encrypted in the game. So you cannot get these models. But what he did, he just wrote an Arduino solution that he wired into his hardware, into his video card, and then put it onto a 3D printer. So he made action figures of people's World of Warcraft characters. And of course got sued totally about it, but it just showed that there's no way to protect this stuff. And when you give it out up front, people get creative with your code rather than creative working around your copy protection and working around your ways of trying to stop people from right-clicking and clever things like that. And debugging is completely simple in HTML5 and JavaScript and CSS, because I can use Firebug, I can use the console in Chrome, I can use the web development tool in Safari, I can probably use something in Internet Explorer as well. So everything is like, look at the source, oh, there's the problem. Not like, go back to Flash, change something, compile it, put it in the page, oh, still not working. Okay, go back to Flash, compile it, blah, blah, blah. Everything is completely there in your browser, live, snappily. And it's so much fun to play with the web in Firebug. Just open Firebug and play around with things and change them and break them. There was this airline that sadly enough somebody blogged about it a few years ago that had, when you booked a normal ticket, it had the ticket class as a drop-down menu. So you can say first class, business class, economy class, strapped to the wing because you couldn't afford anything else. And all they did was turn off the drop-down elements that weren't applicable to you because you paid only that amount of money. But they didn't check that on the server. So what you could do in Firebug is just change the HTML, send off the form, and I flew first class for $200 twice with that website. They never checked it. It was just wonderful. And this is what the web is there. Like, people will play with your stuff, so you might as well be open. You also attract talent with that. If developers out there see that you create some cool stuff, that you send out your code, you share your information, they're more likely to actually come and work for you than by sending them more money and offering them more things. Like, you get these ridiculous job offers right now with like 6 figures, and you know for a fact that you're going to be a guy in the corner that doesn't have any say in anything, that just has to write code. And we don't want that. We're creative people. We want to have a say. We want to play with the stuff. And when you show the world that you're not afraid of giving out stuff, they're going to play with it, and you can find people so easy with that. This was at FOSCON in FOSDEM in Brussels. Linux conference. I was there as a web guy talking about HTML5. I thought they ripped me to shreds because these are these guys that drive Linux drivers and like things in the core operating system and no clue what they're doing really or what they're getting excited about. And I thought, yeah, okay, I'm going to talk about JavaScript. They're going to tell me it's not a programming language. They're going to tell me I wasted my time and so on and so forth. The room was 10 minutes before our talk was overcrowded. 450 people were allowed in the room, 500 were already in there. So it's hot. It's really hot. Good front-end technologies. If your company is known as somebody who uses cool new technology, you will have no problem hiring people. And if you have, ping me on Twitter and I send some people towards you. Which brings me to giving your tech people a voice. A lot of people put their tech people in the corner and says like, no, those guys don't shave. They're not allowed to talk to the press. They're not allowed to talk to clients. We keep them in the basement. That's where they're happy because that's where they grew up. And that's not technologists anymore. We can talk. You should coach us, definitely. But you should not stop people from saying like, hey, we use cool technology. And Flickr does a great job with that. They're showing all the new technology stuff that they're doing on the website. Facebook say what technologies they're using. They're open sourcing technology. And these are all benefits of hiring people. These are all benefits of getting to know. My whole career was word of mouth. I had 3 times I had a job interview, and every time I had job interviews, I didn't take the job. Otherwise, I just got in with word of mouth, had a few normal interviews and a few negotiations, and they're like, okay, let's go for it. Because developer to developer is much, much easier than developer to company to developer. And if people find your developers to be the best in the market or doing really cool stuff, I want to work with those guys. I don't want to be like a freelancer. I want to work with them. They're doing some really good stuff. Of course, there are problems. Every new technology will have problems, and it happens all the time. Like, dear math, I don't want to solve your problems. I have my own problems to solve. Not everything will fit. So every HTML5 solution you do right now will have some problem in one browser or another browser, and so on and so forth. So you have to do a bit of testing, but we always had to do that, let's face it. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript never worked the way it was supposed to be. Even Flash is a myth that you say you build Flash and it works everywhere, because everybody had a different version of the plugin. Some companies didn't allow you to have these kind of things. It was always a mess. Embedding audio and video, for example, should be that easy in HTML5. I should be able to say video source, interview, OGV, which is Auth controls, ahref interview, download the video. In case your browser doesn't support video, it would just be a link, download the video. Everybody's happy, wonderful. And the native controls of the browser are keyboard enabled, are accessible, are available for blind people, are available for people to resize, and it works for everybody. The problem with it, I thought it was a good idea to have a different format in video. So there's MP4 for iOS devices, there's WebM that Google came up with for Chrome and also for Firefox, and there's Ogg Vorbis for all the other browsers. So you have to create the same video 3 times. That's not nice. That doesn't make any sense to me, and I don't want to do this because some people can't agree on what video format should be more open than others. You also can't expect everybody to have the newest browsers. There's old browsers out there that will not be upgraded, and Internet Explorer 6 is still around, and it should have died years ago. I would take it into the garden and shoot it, but you can't. And Microsoft now realized that as well and said, like, hey, we have to show people just how bad Internet Explorer is to get upgraded to Internet Explorer 9. And there are a few things to help you out with that. First of all, it's not a closed technology. It's not a closed discussion group. The web hypertext application list is anybody can sign up. You can all sign up. You can all see where the magic happens. You can all chime in and say, like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So nothing about HTML5 is closed. Everything is open. You can discuss things. You can be part of that. You can submit use cases. You can disagree with people from Google. I do it all the time. It is possible. Sometimes Adobe people as well. So it's a big debate club, and that's good, because before that it was like this magic that happened in the W3C, and we didn't know how to change it, and we had no say in it, but it's now open. HTML5 Doctor is a completely wonderful website in England that explains to you all the ins and outs of HTML5. If you want to find out like simple 5-minute tutorials in your lunch break, read through them, works out wonderfully. Dive into html5.org is a free book on HTML5 that you can read online, and it gets updated all the time. Living document, great idea. Rather than a book you buy, it's outdated 2 weeks later. Great, thank you for the money. Modernizer is a JavaScript library that you put on the page, and it tests what the browser can do. And when the browser can do a certain thing, it puts a class on the HTML element. So in your CSS and in your JavaScript, all you have to do is test for that class, and then you can apply it. So browsers that don't know what CSS3 animations are will not get any CSS3 animations. Browsers that don't know what native video is will not get the native video. It's a simple if statement around your whole application, which is very, very clever and very easy to use. HTML boilerplate, HTML5 is basically a zip file with all the HTML, all the CSS, all the helping JavaScripts that you need to start with HTML5. It even has settings for different servers, because you have to send video with the right HTTP protocol and these kind of things. And yeah, it's a zip file. You put it on your server, you start editing the index.html, and you got an HTML5 website. You don't have to worry about why it works in different browsers, because that thing gets updated all the time. It's supported by Google, it's supported by us, and there's 10 people working on the HTML5 boilerplate constantly. Vidly is a very, very clever way of finding out, making a new business out of a problem. I said before, video has to be in 3 formats to actually support all the browsers out there, and that's just stupid. So what Vidly is a free service by encoding.com. It has an invite code called HNY 2011 right now, and it creates a single URL for the video of you. You upload a video, and it starts converting it for you behind the scenes. So you have like a running log what's happening at the moment. So normally it takes half an hour to convert the video that you upload to all the different HTML5 formats that you'd want to have. And this URL, this Vidly URL, the short one, you put that into your video element, and it redirects it finds out what you're using, and it redirects it to the right format of the video. That's exactly what I want the native video to be if they wouldn't bicker about these different copyrights and so on and so forth. And what Vidly does, it generates it for all the browsers for you. It generates it for all mobile devices, all Android devices, iPad, BlackBerry, Nokia, Samsung mobile devices, and even for game consoles like the PlayStation Portable, Nintendo DS, or the Wii or whatever it is. So it's 37 different formats from one video that you upload, yet you don't have to know how to convert them. And this is exactly what I want to see more. You can package an application, an HTML5 website, as an application with AppMater that actually turns it into a zip file that you can upload to the Google Web Store, and you have your website as an application without having to know how to do that. That's another cool tool to use. PhoneGap is a system that allows you to turn your HTML5 sites into native code for Symbian, for BlackBerry, for Nokia phones, and so on and so forth, like iOS, Palm, Symbian OS, Migo, and Webgl, whatever that is. Anyways, it turns it into a native control without having to learn these languages, and that's pretty awesome. And especially the build.phonegap.com does it for you in the cloud. So you don't need to install anything locally. You just upload your HTML5 zip file, and it generates the rest for you. So be part of the evolution. Don't stand behind and say like, oh, I wait till Chris writes something cool, and then I look at it and I'm like, oh, I can never do this. You can be part of this. Every one of you has something to say about this, and it's a completely open process, so be part of it. This is a Butter app and PopcornJS, which is a JavaScript library that allows you to do the things that I showed earlier, like syncing a video with HTML elements. And this is an interface for that, so you can actually upload a video, you can upload photos, you can upload, show a map, a Wikipedia entry, and it's this interface that looks much like Flash or Shockwave used to look like 10 years ago, and natively works in the browser, and you can then press a button and send that video to somebody, and they will see the video and the HTML stuff popping up next to it. You can remix the web in video formats with this application. Aviary is an online image editor. Why should I install Photoshop all the time? It's really hard to find a pirated copy that works. So you upload the JPEG, you edit it in the browser, you save the JPEG, and you're done. You don't have to start a new system, you don't have to start some software on your computer. Why do I have to do that? I can do that from my phone, and it should be that. The internet is there for us. It is there for us as a platform. We should be using it. Script is a system that turns books into HTML5, so they work for iPads as well. So even if it's a PDF or really badly encoded whatever it is, it turns into something that works natively on all these devices for you. And they're doing a really, really good job with that. They just released some editors as well, so you can change the things before you upload them. It's quite interesting to look at. Diagrammo, I'm talking to these guys right now because they want to write some of the documentation about how they build their system themselves. It allows you to build flowcharts, diagrams, and charts in HTML5 that then run in the browser for you, and they do all the browser serialization for you as well. SlideShare, where these slides are already up on, so you can download them later, Creative Commons, go nuts. Now has a zipcast system. What it means is I can take any of my slides that I have on SlideShare and can say I now start webcasting that to people. And people can chat with it, people can see my video next to the slides for how I explain what I'm doing. And the chat system is using WebSockets. So that scales really, really nicely, and hundreds of users can actually chat with each other without the whole interface slowing down like it was with a lot of other webcasting services. So don't pretend that new technology doesn't involve you, because it does. You are part of this, and you are helping me, you're helping other people. If you just use the stuff rather than just hoping for pixie magic to come from above and help you with it, because you can use it with all these systems that I showed. There's nothing that holds you back, and I want the web to be beautiful. I want the web to be engaging. I want the web to be just, whoa, I can do this on the web, rather than like, oh, I have to buy some software or install some stupid app. I started with the web because I wanted to be the better media. I want the web to replace video and radio and TV and all these kind of things and newspapers. And we are well on the way if we use new technologies. So let's work together on that whole thing rather than just hoping somebody does it and then we can finally sell it to our boss. And let's be ready. Let's rock and roll, you know, for a better web. Thank you very much. That was basically like all my bookmarks from the last few days. So, are there any questions? The presentation is already on SlideShare, and it is downloadable already. I will also put the notes on my blog tonight or tomorrow, depending how drunk I am tonight. Cool. Thanks very much again.